Today on this episode, we talk all about the balance between striving for being a healthy follower of Jesus versus striving for greatness, striving for growth. How do we become a healthy follower of Jesus who is about not just what we do for God, but also how to be with God, yet at the same time seeing tremendous return on investment? If you're interested in hearing more, tune in. Hey everybody, welcome to the Allison Park Leadership Podcast, where we have culture creating conversations. I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Dave.
And my name is Jeff, and we're glad you've joined us. Of course, we're father and son, also both pastoring on staff at Allison Park Church, and we have a repeat guest with us today.
Good to be back.
This is Josh.
This is Josh, also one of my sons, also on staff at Allison Park Church. And often we bring Josh on the podcast because he's a great source of topics for us. Right.
Usually Dave and I start arguing about something, and then we're like,
yeah, so just to let you in a little bit on how the podcast actually develops. So I have 4 sons and a daughter, and oftentimes when we're together, we have conversations about, probably like any family does, but often we get into deep conversations and debates, and it's those moments that sort of birthed this idea, right?
Yeah, I don't think every family has the kind of... I think if you asked producer Matt if that was normal, I don't think he would say yes. Sarah didn't feel like it was normal. Just like,
oh, really? It's not normal?
Not the way that we do it.
You guys have deep debates over everything. Star Wars, Marvel characters, video games, theology.
Yeah.
Most people,
culture,
when they see the debating, are
politics,
very surprised, like, whoa, you guys are intense.
Yeah, it's probably maybe the inherent Italian part of your heritage
I guess
comes out.
By the way, if you could get a little closer, Josh, we're having a hard time hearing you. Yeah.
So before we get into the topic today, I know we have some
want to give some shout-outs
today.
Gratitudes to a couple of people who left us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. So first of all, we want to give a shout-out to Ian Ivancic, and then also to somebody named Forbearer. So thank you for your kind reviews. As always, we would love to give anybody who wants to give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts a shout out. We should put a tutorial on YouTube because everybody's like, how do I even do this? Maybe me and producer Matt will have to work on making that.
Show notes. There you go.
Yeah, and the show notes, we'll try to make something. But if you would like a shout out, we'd love to give one to you as well. Any platform you're on, typically you can give us a 5-star review if you would like to, and that's a generous way to help us get the word out about what we're doing here. So
here we are in season 5. It's 2025, and
I think it's 6, Dad.
Is it 6?
Yeah.
We always debate about what season it is.
Well, we just finished our 5th year. This is our 6th year.
Here we are in season 6 in 2025. Yeah, because we started in 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're just getting some traction this year. So what's our topic for today, guys?
Okay. So today we're going to talk about the balance of health versus growth.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or health versus the pursuit of greatness,
Okay.
So talking about the role of there sometimes feels like there's a competition between a healthy kind of ambition to move and grow and reach people and expand and conquer new territory, if you will, versus the other side, which is focus on being rather than doing, focus on being with God, focus on having a healthy spirituality, those kinds of things. It's not that you can't do both, but there is a little bit of a tension at odds, because sometimes to be healthy, it feels like you have to pull a little bit against just grind. And sometimes there's but if you are there too much, are you going to fall into complacency? So we've been having this discussion in our friend group recently.
Well, it really has been going on for almost 10 years now. Well,
wow.
Actually, because I'm saying, I think a lot of this was born out of you and I being youth pastors together, which started in December of 2014. So over 10 years ago now. And so I was the middle school pastor starting in 2014. Dave, you were high school youth pastor starting maybe a year before that-ish. Yeah. And I only did that for 3 or 4 years. But during that time, speaking of arguments, the arguments that Dave and I would get in debates or arguments of youth ministry philosophy were sometimes so long and heated. It was really good. But I
kind of. I mean, in the long run.
Well, I guess, if people saw some of them, they would be like, this is not good. But there were a lot of times that we would kind of go back and forth about how much should you give to something, to an event or to a particular initiative or thing, how much energy, how much time should you put in, how much should that, affect your spiritual focus, or just like your emotional energy, or you putting up too much boundaries to guard your emotion. I feel like that was a lot of our discussions.
So, and it surrounded some really big events that in order to pull off a big youth event, you almost have to sort of give up your life for a month.
Yeah, you do.
Right? In order to make it happen. And then it happens and you're totally exhausted and you have to recover from that. And so you were sort of taking the side, this is worth it. Like, we need to push it hard to get it up to a certain stage.
Yeah.
And you were saying, this is, how much is too much, is the question that you were saying. When is the extra 10 hours to have this special feature that may or not
make a big enough impact?
Yeah, yeah. And so there was this tension between the two of you, and you actually really pulled off some incredible events together.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like anything suffered, but there was this, I guess, underlining question of how healthy is this approach to life and ministry? And so let's broaden it for a moment, because we're talking right now as pastors, right? So we're all pastoring in various capacities. You guys were youth pastors at the time. But how does this work out in someone's life that's not leading in ministry? I think everybody feels this in their life in some way, right? In their company. How would you draw a parallel?
Are we talking like work-life balance?
Yeah, is that what this is?
I think it's a conversation that I think in ministry is a little bit more nuanced, but we are kind of talking work-life balance of how much do you give to one thing if that takes away from something else. There's just an added layer of complexity.
Yeah, but I think it's a little different than work-life balance. That's part of the discussion, because it's like, practically speaking, how much for this, how much for this. But I think we're talking about the ideals in a different way.
So should I want to be great, or should I want to be healthy?
When those pull at each other, where do you find balance? Because so the weekend event that we would do as
WKND,
yeah, right.
It was called Weekend.
The youth retreat event that we would do as an example. It's like, we want this to be as effective as possible. I want to put on the best experience we can do. You know, I would love for all of our students, after they leave this, to leave with, an impression like, I can't wait for the next one, and I want to invite my friends back, and I would like to feel like I put it all on the line, like I didn't have anything else left to give. But so there's that, but then there's like the other side, which is, but I have a family. Well, I don't know if either you did earlier than I did.
Yeah.
But I have a family, and I want to make sure I'm not taking away from them too much. And also, how much impact do these smaller things have? Like, shouldn't we, like, it's not like we become more like Jesus just by working and working. There's a certain point where it's like we have to have enough space for our own personal health, and we need to be able to, like, hear the Holy Spirit. And sometimes if you overwork yourself, you numb yourself to what God's saying, because you're just putting pressure on, like, what I do is what counts, and it takes credit away from what God wants to do anyway, because God is responsible for the growth.
Yeah,
so
you can in ministry, it is possible to plan God out of the equation. It can still be a great event, and amazing things happen, but there's no room for God to work in that space. And then there's also that you can work so hard that you work God out of your own life, or health out of your own life.
And the other side is you focus so much on health that you're sort of lazy.
Yeah.
Or if not lazy, you're unambitious.
Yeah.
You're within a certain box of, my resources are only this much, and if I step outside of that, I risk mental health issues.
Right.
So there's the pursuit of something great and growing, or there's the pursuit of being healthy.
I think the extremes of this too, that we had been kind of talking. So I don't know that we got into this, but this is what I feel is the one extreme of the push side feels like it's sort of out of where Jesus talks about the parable of the talents. I don't remember exactly where that is, but the wicked servant who buried it. It's like, okay, I need to go, because if I'm going to prove to God that I took it seriously, I better work my butt off to make this happen. That's sort of I feel like the extreme work, and we need to work ourselves to death because it's for the kingdom and this is a serious thing. The other end feels like, I feel like the end that you have talked about recently is like the slowing sort of reflective side has rubbed you a little bit the wrong way, because it's like, it's too much putting up boundaries to say, like, I can't ever feel overwhelmed and I don't ever want to feel this way and have to guard myself. we did.
You meaning Dave? You were pointing
Yes, I'm
to Dave,
pointing at Dave.
in
Yeah.
case you're just listening to this. Yeah. So before we go on with that thought, I'll just insert something that's a non-ministry comparative. Okay, so I grew up in the 70s here in Pittsburgh, where the Steelers were winning Super Bowls. We had one of the greatest teams of all times at that particular moment. And Chuck Noll, who was the head coach, had a policy that every one of his assistant coaches would go home at dinner, whereas most of the NFL during the season, coaches were there at 5 a.m. and not going home till 10 o'clock, don't see their families. Noel was like, if we're going to win in a healthy way.
That's awesome.
And they won 4 Super Bowls. And I know that because Tony Dungy eventually got hired on Chuck Noll's staff, or was also a player on the Steelers, and he talks about that healthy approach to life. So I think that's the thing, in case you're not in ministry, that we're trying to grab out here is what's the place where the right balance is struck, and when is it okay to go home and say this is good enough? Like, it's good. We could make it better by being here an hour more, but when is good enough? And then I guess let's kick it back to your question about Dave. So we've talked about this on this podcast before, but the John Mark Comer Ruthless Elimination of Hurry book is the one that really hits at the, what does he say? Above all things, eliminate hurry from your life. Didn't someone give him that advice?
Yeah,
is it
Dallas Willard.
Is it that trend that you feel some resistance to?
No. To be clear, I don't feel resistance to the trend of. I mean, this is also a big Peter Scazzero, who wrote Emotionally Healthy Discipleship and Spirituality.
Okay, well, so slow down and because we often recommend good resources on this podcast. What was that book?
So the newest one by this guy, his name is Peter Scazzero. He wrote a book called Emotionally Healthy Discipleship, which is all about how oftentimes our walk with Jesus, our pursuit of becoming like him, is a veneer. It's sort of surface deep, and it seems like we know a lot, but the roots aren't there to weather through storms. He has this comparison of things that are built with brick versus things that are built with something else that have a veneer of brick on the front end. So it looks like brick, but if you take a hammer to it, it's not as sturdy the same way.
Okay.
So it's a good book.
Yeah, and Peter Scazzero is a pastor.
Yeah,
and
he
author.
formerly led a church in New York.
He talks about emotional health a lot in his ministry, right?
Yeah,
several books about that.
Yeah, he wrote about for his first couple of decades in ministry, he was leading out of a lot of emotional unhealth.
Okay,
and that had a lot of fruit.
So
in
it's
the
his
church
life message.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then John Mark Comer with the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry is another good resource. But all that to say, I don't have a resistance to the idea. Like, so their main idea is, if we're going to be a disciple of Jesus, we need to work on following him first and being like him, and work on producing second, because it's more important to be a person that's like Jesus than to be a person who just works for him. You know what I mean? You could be a great worker for him and not be like him at all, and that's a danger of our corporate church American type of working environments. So if I have resistance, it's not to the idea of that. I think that's a great thing, but I think that amidst the millennial and Gen Z boundaries of emotional health and of making sure we're being conservative, and then we talked years ago about quiet quitting. This job is draining me so much, I'm not going to quit, but I'm going to just try less hard. I think there is a danger of focusing so much on health that we don't look anything.
That we become lazy.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, when you look at the New Testament, in the book of Acts, the people that helped to shape the church after Jesus. I mean, Paul was not living a life of great boundaries, probably.
Well, but what we don't understand about that era is that they walked a lot of places.
Sure.
Right. So in between moments of ministry or interaction, they would have to build a fire and make their food, and they would have to walk to the next village, and there was downtime.
Sure.
It wasn't like laying around time. It wasn't video game time, but it wasn't the high-paced, technologically driven culture that we're in right now.
Right, where they could just fly to the next spot. And
yeah,
it's hours between
exactly.
ministry.
Right.
Sure.
So we don't know if Paul was healthy because
True.
we don't live that way anymore.
But I think lazy is probably not even exactly what we're getting at as much as resistance to being stretched. Because it's not like I'm not working hard enough.
Exactly.
It's like I'm uncomfortable
whenever I'm stretched.
Whenever I'm stretched in a certain way. And there sometimes is a tendency with, younger people that I have seen who they hit a certain point and they go, this is just too much. And I just need to back off for now and take a break. And I think on the other side of that is really healthy growth that God stretches people into. But that's what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So there's an over,
because if you push or you lean back or shrink back when you feel uncomfortable, you'll never reach your potential.
Yes,
or
exactly.
maybe even fulfill the calling that God has on you.
Yes.
But if you stretch too far and you push too hard, then you could end up frying at the edges and burning yourself out. And maybe all you end up with is the veneer brick wall instead of a real
solid
Christ-like life.
So here's the ultimate pursuit of this conversation. It's how can you become someone who is a radical follower of Jesus, who is healthy, who is taking enough time to make sure you're not leading out of ambition or purely out of ambition, which can become selfish for validation reasons, you know what I mean, that you feel about. So how do we become someone that is actually healthy while still pursuing the radical expansion of God's kingdom, that we would see people groups change, that we would see family legacies flip, that cities would, you know what I mean?
How do we
movements.
do this?
How do we do it? How do we do both?
Okay.
Because I think all of us want both.
Yeah.
And probably all the listeners want both. I don't think anybody wants to just be someone who is great but extremely unhealthy, that loses their family in the process. And nobody probably also wants to be comfortable and healthy yet have their life leave no impact at all. I mean, those are both bad results.
Yeah. We're talking about addressing both ends of how do we make sure that we aren't making work into an idol that we're doing in the name of loving God, and how do we also pull to the middle of we're not just always protecting and putting up boundaries. There is a Peter Scazzaro quote that struck me when I read Emotionally Healthy Discipleship that I really like, where he said, sometimes we'll do absolutely anything we can to avoid failure, and in doing so, work becomes our new God. Mm-hmm. And I think like that at least is that starting end of like, you have set some limits for us as a staff over the years where like, where some churches, you know, might say, go for it. We're not going to set limits on it. You can do your thing. You can work 80, 90, 100 hours because it's for the kingdom of God. I don't know. I mean, there was a point where
so the weird thing about me is that I think as a leader of the organization that I lead, I have done a pretty good job of creating the proper limits for the people that work for me, and I haven't done that very good for me. So I see the value in this, and I want to make sure that the people who work for me are healthy. And so if someone's overworking or in too much, we will caution them. But I still am working on this at 60 years old. For me,
I think that's such a foreign concept for some people who might be listening. Though, is like being in too much feels like, well, this is the gospel we're talking about. This is can you be in too much? Like, how do you know that that's even a?
I can say I have been in at times am. So my thing. So I'll just talk about me for a minute, and you can figure out where this fits in. When I am going too hard, it's not because I'm ambitious. I think maybe it is, or proud. I don't know. I mean, who can judge themselves? I just really love it. Mm. Like I get. It's sort of like an adrenaline rush, in a way. Like I just really enjoy what I do, and so I end up taking on more than I should because I can. Like there's some things I do because I can do it, not because God's called me to do it or I should be doing it. And I enjoy it until I don't enjoy it anymore. And then I start to feel burned out, right? You mean, then you're like, I just want to quit everything. So I would say for me, I want to have that proper health balance, but I always tend to end up on the side of personally working too hard. Where are you, Josh? Let's do a little confession.
I think the debate moment between me and Dave is that I don't know if you would still say this. Maybe I interpreted what you said wrong, but like I think I'm probably now lean more towards the side of trying to put up boundaries because. Can I just go into my story for a minute?
Mm-hmm. I think it helps when we're honest.
I think, you know, for the first 5 years, really up until. You know, I guess a little bit into COVID, 5-6 years of being in ministry, I felt constantly unhappy. Like I just felt like I was failing at everything. Felt like I was failing at ministry. Felt like I wasn't a good enough dad. Felt like I lacked depth as a as a follower of Jesus, and just a lot of these ways. And so then I had this music licensing business that I was trying to do on the side, and so I would work really hard while I was here, and then I would go home and I was not happy with myself, so I'd build this business on the side and like constantly wasn't taking a day off ever, because I was like, I couldn't sit still on like what I would consider a Sabbath, because I was like, I could be productive right now, like, and it feels better to just go in there and just get stuff done and feel like I'm actually working towards something. And for a long time, it felt like a noble thing. Like, yeah, like, well, I'm providing for my family by working on this music thing and then by having this ministry job, and I'm still making time for my wife and kids, but I was like emotionally collapsing during that time where like I was just constantly, our younger brother Caleb is somebody that I was very close. I'm still am, but like during that time, I had a lot of conversations with him where I was talking about just like, yeah, nothing matters. We're all going to die. And he was like, you say that a lot. And he was like, I think you're depressed. And I was like, I'm not depressed. And then one day I sat down and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm depressed.
You said that so fast. But
yeah, I am talking fast. That's my tendency.
You would say that like a joke. He'd be like, what's it all matter? We're all going to die anyway.
Yeah, I would say that fast. Yeah, that's true.
And we're eventually like, it's weird that you keep joking about this.
Well, and then I started writing.
Like you're serious.
I started writing songs about that kind of like just, life is crazy and no one can figure it out. We're all going to die. Nothing matters. And I was like,
sounds like Ecclesiastes. It's like where Solomon
sort of
was
going
like,
through that.
Everything's meaningless. It's all just it's going to be blown away by the wind. It's that sort of mindset that Solomon fell into.
And just to clarify, if you don't know Josh that well, that's not Josh's temperament.
No, not at all.
On the Enneagram, he is a 7, which means he's optimistic and positive.
So every time you would say that, it was really weird, because he'd be like, what does not matter? We're all going to die anyway. And eventually, because I was there too, eventually it was sort of like, this is a weird joke you keep making, which is what led you to realizing maybe you were depressed.
It was when our grandma on mom's mom, she passed away 2021 or 2022. That's when it kind of all came to a head. I had hit a lot of the measurable goals in music that I'd wanted to. I had tried different things in ministry, and then eventually I was like, none of this matters. I don't feel like I'm succeeding at anything. And then I read that book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, right after, and sort of realized like, oh, I am coping with a lot of my life by just always having something to do. I can't sit still for a day. Like a Sabbath is stressful to me because I have to let go and I have to build some margin in. So now, over the past couple of years coming out of that, I have really tried to build limits into my life. And sometimes you label me as the health guy. I think particularly, I don't know if we can talk about our discussion.
It's not bad being known as the health guy. But I mean, honestly, I knew parts of that story, Josh, but even as your dad, I didn't know all that. That's really interesting. So where are you now?
I feel good about where I've struck. I think, I guess, where am I at now in regards to what? Like, we could talk about a lot of like
your journey. So you were unhappy and overworking. You hit this point where things sort of shifted for you. You read A Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. You started to think about your life differently. Mm-hmm. Where are you now?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like God was pruning my the music piece. I'm still doing stuff with music, but I had to surrender that and let that die, because I was always going and going. And for a season, I was just like, you know what? I need to just stop this so that I can, allow God to bring joy back into being at home with my family and, back into just being in ministry. So now, I feel really good about taking a full Sabbath day. I can really enjoy being that full day of being with my family. So I think
you're now generally happy. You
absolutely.
feel generally healthy. I mean, there's probably moments when you are on one side of this or the other because you've made some adjustments.
Because I had to surrender.
By the way, I'll just mention this as the old guy in the room now. So I do think there is something that happens for everybody, and maybe I think this is both men and women, and in their 20s and into their 30s. You're, for the very first time, figuring yourself out. You're like, we just got married. How do we make that balance? We just had kids. How do we make that balance? I have a career now. How do I make that balance? And I'm really good at this. I love doing that. Like, I want to be successful at this. I think I can make money at this. I think I can really grow a church. So it's all of this learning that you get jammed into a 10-year period of time. And that's why often there's the midlife crisis, because you learn more about yourself. And at some point you hit that point where you're like, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore, right? And it's very natural for you, like the seasons you said as youth pastors in your first job, and you're trying to succeed and you don't want to disappoint people, and then you're getting married and you're having kids, to figure out yourself, how you're wired and how to make those adjustments. Yeah. I don't actually think this says anything negative about you or anyone else who's having that struggle in that season of your life. It's just the learning curve. Now, if you don't arrive, because how old are you now, Josh? 30?
I'll be 31 in a few weeks here.
And you're going to be 34? Yeah. So right about where you are, Dave, especially 34 to 40, if you don't figure this out in that little window, it's oftentimes that people make missteps there, because you now have enough information about all of the variables that now you have to make value-based decisions about the growth health question in order to lead the rest of your life well. And I think that's why conversations like this are important to have for us on the podcast, because many people are sorting this out. And just to lift the condemnation off, it doesn't mean you're doing anything bad or wrong. It's just that you're learning about yourself, your responsibilities, your family, and what it takes to do the life that God's wanting you to lead. So that's your story. You want to say anything?
Well, the last thing I was going to say, because you asked me, how are you now? And I felt like it was difficult. I'll just quickly say, I feel like learning to pay attention to the different barometers in my life of my wife and kids. How are they feeling? How am I really feeling underneath right now? Am I enjoying this? Because I should be enjoying doing this. It doesn't mean it's never hard, but
that's not the final rule, but it's a factor.
How does my boss feel? How do my friends feel about, and my family? So that has really helped to get to a place of stability.
So where are you in this journey, Dave? That Josh told us his story. Where are you in this?
I've talked about my story a number of times on this.
So where are you today? You don't have to tell the whole story, but where would you?
I think I'm trying to. I'm learning how to balance. How do I say this? I think I am trying to figure out how far I can push, and also what actually moves things without getting to the point of where I'm leaving too little for my family. I do think one of those things,
because you've now, with having 2 children, you've entered a new world.
Yeah.
It's one kid to 2 kids changes everything. Mm-hmm. And if you have a particularly difficult child at some point in the journey of having, more than one or one difficult child, that also is a major factor. It's like, because that just takes a lot more energy. A wonderful, but maybe difficult child. Like some people, they just have a personality that takes more time to develop them into the human beings that God birthed them to be. Yeah. And they end up being wonderful at the end, but maybe at some point in time, they just drain the life out of you.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking from experience, but I wonder who you're talking about by this. Well, I won't make you name them. I have some theories of my own. But no, I think for the harder thing is it's probably not as difficult for me as it's for Sarah. It's just, she's with them all the time. Like right now, James has the flu, Johnny's got a stuffy nose, and they're both very they're just in a very dependent place. Sometimes they're needy and they're both screaming at the same time. And I come home and I'm like, wow, I got to help carry the weight a little bit, because it's a lot. Whenever Sarah has gone and I have them, which has not been a lot, it's just like, it's a handful.
It makes you respect moms,
my goodness,
and especially single parents.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it really does, because just a little dose of that makes you say,
moms are built different.
So when you add the single parent, like some people listen to this podcast, you're a single parent and also have a career and you're trying to make everything work. And this is like, it feels almost like you're in the miracle zone. Like, I don't know how this is possible without some kind of grace from God. But go ahead, back to.
So for me, it's like I am built. I'm not the same as you as far as you're like, oh, I can just keep doing this and I love it. I'm like, there's certain things I like to do, but I haven't probably stepped onto a fast track of like, oh, every time I do this is working. I know what I can do well, and in the spaces I can do them. Like the podcast is probably one of these things where we can have conversations and strategy meetings, things like that. I think I'm still figuring some of that stuff out. The reason this is a topic of conversation for me is I'm trying to figure out how do I leave as much as I can on the field, if you will, when it comes to ministry, but still come home and give 100% to my family. Because sometimes it's like in a season where I've pushed a lot, I'm coming home at much less than my best. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not fair for me to expect my family to always compensate for that. Like, well, you just have to understand that this is, you know what I mean? Dad's doing so much. And so it's like, I want to be able to be a great dad and a great husband and serve my family, but still be a great pastor. And I do feel like it's okay for me to have a little less. Like if I'm like constantly pushing and I'm a little more tired, as long as I'm not burning myself out. And I don't mean from too much time as much as my energy is too low. And I've been in seasons where I'm dreading work. I'm dreading the next day. I'm feeling like a little panicky about how things are going to go. Maybe nobody else, like my team is, things are in a good spot, but I'm like, I want it to be different. I want to push it further. This isn't working. That's not a healthy spot to be. I'm not there at all right now, but I think I'm trying to to discern for myself, how do I make sure my life counts for all that it can, while still being what I need to be for my family, and obviously following Jesus well too. But that feels like less of the issue than the family part for me.
So I don't know if you have answers here, but I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, so I think of 3 key words when I think of this, and I'll describe where I have my issues, okay? Because you guys shared your story. I'll tell a little bit about mine. But the 3 words that I think of are priorities, boundaries, and limits. Are the 3 words that come to my mind when I think about this. So priorities are, what are the things most important? I'm pretty good at this, identifying on the scale of things, the things that are the most important, the things that are least important, the things I'm supposed to pay attention to, the things I'm supposed to delegate to somebody else, filtering it through the framework of priorities. I know what I'm called to do, what I'm not called to do, where God has anointed me, where I'm not anointed. I want to be in the places where God is kissing. So I prioritize those places, and I put time and energy into the things that are the most important in my life, that I understand that God has assigned for me to pay attention to. So that involves my wife and family. It involves certain things that I do in ministry. Okay, so that's the first one. Boundaries are what I draw for other people. Boundaries are, I'm going to say, you can't interrupt me today because this is my Sabbath day. Boundaries say, I'm not going to meet with you right now, but I'll schedule this down the road. Like, I'm not going to let this phone call or email interrupt me right now, but I'll handle this later, and I'm going to create proper boundaries so that other people don't encroach on my time and I don't become a slave to other people's demands. Mm-hmm. Where my problem is with the last word, and that's limits. Limits are the things I set for myself. Limits are, I'm going to work this much and then I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do these things, even though I could do them or I want to do them. I'm going to limit myself to my priorities. I actually am pretty good with boundaries. I'm bad with limits.
Why? Why is it?
That's a really good question. Why am I bad with limits? I don't know. Like, I'm great with priorities. I know exactly what my priorities are, and I'm good with drawing boundaries for others. I guess I just don't recognize my own compulsion to work until I'm burned out.
Well, okay. So, but boundaries, would that include like I give too many people time? That's
a limit.
Is that a limit? Okay.
So a boundary is, you're taking my time.
Okay.
A limit is, I'm making myself accessible.
I understand. Okay. Got it.
Right? So a limit is, I can't let myself go and do this at this particular time. Okay, for instance, we just had this conversation yesterday. So there are certain weekends of the year that I preach here at Allison Park Church, and there's certain weekends that I don't. When I don't, I'm almost always preaching somewhere else. So that's a limit thing. I could take the weekend off and let that be a recuperation weekend, but I know I can handle it to go preach somewhere else. And this person's been asking me to come, and I have a great relationship with them. I'd love to see what God's doing in that church. So I'm going to go, even though it may not be the wisest thing for me. I really could use my body needs a chance to catch up. So limits are, I really need to say no to that, because I've got to prioritize my own health and well-being, and I won't know that until I hit that. But I would hit that stage of feeling fried. But I would say everybody struggles with one of those 3. Priorities, boundaries, or limits. And this is what makes this complicated, is that not it's complex. Sometimes those three things are twisted up together, and sometimes that has to be. And maybe there's a fourth, and that is motivations. Right? Why am I doing this?
Yeah,
this is where you talk about ambition. Am I doing this to prove something? So I don't know if you think I hit anything there with those words.
Hit anything in terms of
Is that the core of this discussion, or is there something more?
I think it's a big piece of what we're talking about. I think part of it though is that, let's just talk about ministry. I'll talk about an angle, and you can redirect me if this doesn't quite hit. But like, at least what struck me is when we're talking about like hitting priorities, boundaries, and limits, I think I'll just again talk ministry. You can spend so much time on priorities and get so much accomplished, but lack any sort of spiritual depth. And this may have just been like my own fears at the beginning, but there was almost this constant fear and dread inside of me early on in ministry that I always had to be accomplishing something, and I couldn't take time for spiritual depth. But one of the things I really appreciate about being here over time is there is a huge priority on being in a place of spiritual depth, like first to get, like even while we're on.
The organizational priority is for you to be healthy spiritually, and that eventually caught up to you where you felt like I have the permission here for that. Is that motivations though? Is that like I'm doing all this because I'm afraid that I'm going to be discovered as invalid and a fraud?
Talking with a lot of other people who work in ministry, and I know this is not a ministry only thing, but talking with a lot of other people in ministry, that is a very common thread across a lot of churches, is you want to be an effective steward of your time.
Right.
So it's like 40 to 80 hours, whatever, you go, and it's like, do the depth on your own time of praying or, reading a spiritual book or a leadership book or studying the Word of God. And it's like, no, that should be happening always outside of work because you need to be an effective steward.
Okay.
And I feel like
so you're saying APC hasn't put that pressure on you?
I don't know. I don't think
it has allowed for you the opportunity.
I think it was like that a little bit at the beginning.
Okay.
I think it was at our first few years.
Maybe
of ministry.
10 years ago.
Yeah, but I don't think it is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a part of this too is what we're doing as a staff this year. I think this is why I'm passionate about the health part of it. Is
we'll talk about what we're doing this year. That's a good thing for.
So
Go ahead, yeah.
Based on this book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which I'm sure you guys have talked about sometime on this podcast.
I don't know if we ever have, actually.
Oh, really?
That would be a good topic.
It's the
kind of, but it's too.
It's a how.
It's a very much how.
Not a why.
But it talks about setting a wildly important goal
Uh-huh.
that has these 4 measurable things, I think is, if I'm remembering it. But anyway, we've been doing this for the past couple of years. For this past year, we said one of the things we want to shape our church and our culture is to say, as we allow God to shape us and put extra time into developing ourselves and prioritizing prayer and Bible reading and study, like studying leadership books or spiritual growth books, that God will use that to expand the capacity, not just of our staff, but our whole church. And I feel like it's been a huge year of growth for at least in the Hampton staff. I'm not at every campus, obviously, but I feel like it's been, talking with a lot of people, it's been the year of the most stability and health in that way. So I look at this and I'm like, this is awesome.
Because the investment in personal development, spiritual and skill development has actually borne the fruit of church growth, right? So we prioritize personal development and we're growing and reaching people, and we're assuming that there's a connection between those two things.
Yeah. Oh, but what I'm saying is that plays into your priorities, boundaries, and limit things for us, and we agreed upon it.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to prioritize this. You might have a little bit of a hard time with this because this will mean that you might have a little bit less time if you're going to be healthy.
But it's based upon what I think it's Ecclesiastes 10:10, which says, if you're swinging the axe and the axe isn't sharp, right, more strength is needed. But if you take the time to sharpen the blade,
Is that in Ecclesiastes?
Ecclesiastes 10:10.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. So if you take the time to sharpen the blade, you get more done with less effort, which I think is true. But if you're healthy as a leader spiritually, and you're prayed up and you're enjoying your life, everything you do will have a more effectiveness on it, and will help you actually to grow more. I think that's actually true. Like if you are healthier, you'll be more effective, and being more effective means you'll actually do more than you were doing before. It's like seek first the kingdom, and all these things are added to you, like sharpen the axe, and everything's going to actually get stronger. I think that when we do this right, maybe it's not actually an either or choice. Maybe it's a both and choice, but it's a proper perspective on health and development, so that growth can be a result of what's coming out of your life rather than just what you're performing in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The weird thing about this discussion is we've stayed in like the tension of this for the whole discussion. It's like I think part of it is like when it comes to the solution as to how you move forward, I think it is like it's the kind of topic where each person has to evaluate for themselves where they are.
Yeah.
Because nobody can really tell you except for you. I mean, the thing is, okay, there's this discussion, I feel like, even if it's just internal, is often coming up around people that are feeling like they're struggling to have the success they want. So then you can go into well, am I putting enough in? Or, well, maybe I'm just like this because I'm healthier than those people that are out there. Like, I haven't had those results, but they're just burning their families down probably, and they're not even following God that well.
Yeah, the reason why I'm such a failure is because I'm so healthy.
Yeah, not that they are a failure, no,
the reason why I'm such a success is because I'm unhealthy, right?
The reason I'm such a success is because I work so hard.
Yeah,
which also is the other side too. And it's like, well, so did God have a role in this, like for you? You know what I mean? No, I'm just
really good.
Yeah. Well, if anybody else worked as hard as me,
yeah, because you can have crazy entrepreneurial levels of success in ministry and be extremely unhealthy at the same time.
Well, I've heard this this phrase recently where what was it? It's something, I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but it said, the church started in the East as a faith, and it became a culture in the West, and it became a business in America. And you can run it like a business. There are a lot of places that do.
Yeah.
Where you can achieve business success from a church perspective. We've had a number of what is success conversations on this podcast. And I think the tension of this whole thing somewhat revolves around this. Like, can I be successful and healthy? Or if I feel unsuccessful, is it because, like, is it possible to have both? I mean, I think on a podcast, John Mark Comer was even saying, I'm not sure if it's possible to have a huge megachurch and still be a healthy follower of Christ.
Wow.
Which I think he's speculating. He's saying based on his experience. I don't think he's saying you can't.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, like the only solution really is you just have to make sure that you're not leading on an empty relationship with God. Yeah. You have to be honest about where your family is at. Am I as good of a dad or a husband as I am a pastor?
Yeah, there's this little episode in Moses' life that sort of is an example of that. So when you said the thing about John Mark Comer, can you lead something large and still be healthy? Because I don't think we should just say make a church. I think it could be anything you're leading that's large.
Yeah, right.
So Moses is leading the people of Israel through the desert, right? He's had this enormous responsibility on his shoulders, placed there by God, delivered the people of Israel out of Egypt oppression, and helping them camp and get their needs supplied through manna and water from supernatural supply of God. Eventually, Moses sends his wife and 2 kids back to his father-in-law. And he says, I don't have time for them. You're going to have to take care of them. And the father-in-law shows up and says, this is not good. And so he's like, I've watched you for a couple of days and I see how you're functioning, and you have got to reorient your life because you're never going to sustain this. So he says, you need to raise up other people. You're going to give some people charge over tens and others over hundreds and others over thousands. And you're going to save the hard decisions for you, and you're going to delegate the rest, and you're going to reorganize this whole thing. That's kind of in a way. So if John Mark Comer looked at Moses, he would have said, well, I guess you could never really lead a nation out of slavery and into the promised land and be an emotionally healthy leader. Well, Moses didn't get that option. God called him to do that. What is he going to say? I opt out of this, God, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Because I want to be emotionally healthy.
By the way, I'm not sure that's a fair representation of John
but
Mark's
what I'm saying is
stance.
that's like saying, can you just opt out of an assignment from God because you feel like it's going to be unhealthy for you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that's I think what you have to do is say, somehow in this assignment I have from God, which is an enormous one,
Right.
I have to figure out how to be healthy.
You might have to change the model.
Yeah.
So that's what Moses did.
Yeah,
he
he
was
changed
leading
the
out of
model.
one model. He changed the model to be sustainable.
I don't think crossing your name off the list for big things in life, I would disagree with John Mark Comer on that one.
But I don't think he's, just to be clear, I'm not sure that that's what he was trying to say. I think he was saying the way that organizations like this tend to function is unhealthy.
Let me give a specific tension that we've been wrestling through in light of, I don't know if we're considered a mega church or not.
No, we're slightly below it.
Okay.
2,000 is supposed to be mega. We're just a little below that we used to be, I guess we had 6 campuses, but go ahead.
So this has been one of the primary reasons for this conversation was we hit a point at our Hampton campus in the past 18 months where we were like, we can't fit everybody. We have a Saturday night service and 2 Sunday morning services, and we're running out of space parking-wise and in our auditorium. What do we do? And so we started to explore the options of how do we add a service? When can that be? We quickly arrived at the conclusion that it probably had to be on Sunday and that it had to sort of be within certain time constraints. And I started to be the one who, in light of what I feel like some of the things that God was doing in my life, I was sort of pounding the table and saying, I am concerned about us moving ahead with adding this service and sacrificing some of the space that we have in between services for community to be built and for us to spend time in the presence of God. And then, talking with some other staff who were like, yeah, but we have people who want to come here. What, we're going to turn them away?
Yeah.
Like, people can't just come to church. So what do we do about that? That's where I feel like I got some of the reputation of,
The health
without
guy.
even realizing it, like I was anti, we don't want to do this. And there may have been points where I said some intense statements because I believed in this concept. But we added this service, I don't know,
and we're
9 months ago.
Yeah, and it's working. And more people are coming, and we're navigating the tension still.
Yeah.
So we've talked about ideas like maybe in the summer months we go back to 3, and maybe there's ways to give extra time off to certain staff members who are putting extra time in. So we're mitigating that debate, but those are the things that are often the tensions in this situation. And I'll just say, Dave, you had mentioned, everybody's got to sort this out for themselves in a way because everyone's situation is unique and everyone's wiring is different. I don't know that I've ever talked to anybody who says, I have this mastered.
Sure.
The work-life balance thing, the health growth thing, it's never been an issue for me.
Yeah. Right.
Like, aren't we supposed to be in this tension?
Probably.
I mean,
to some degree.
isn't this, if God's called us to do something and we believe he's called us to do big things, shouldn't this be part of what is stewardship
Yeah, I think that's
of
true.
our lives?
Well, you're probably always butting up against either the tension for how do I stay personally healthy, or how do I put enough in, or what do we prioritize to make this grow?
Yeah.
I think you're probably
but we can sometimes feel almost condemned, like, man, I have really been struggling to do this right. But isn't this what everyone faces? Isn't this a struggle?
Yes, but you're talking as if everyone's making decisions that are healthy for themselves and their church.
I mean, if you look at your life right now and you're like, yeah, I'm probably not doing great in this area, I don't know that that's something that you should feel heavy condemnation about. I think that's just what at some point in time in this journey, you're going to feel imbalanced on one side or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody will always probably feel the tension, but I think not everybody, some people, or even a lot of people who are in the tension are also potentially in a danger zone.
Okay.
And I think sometimes we can just accept, like, well, I'm always just going to be in this tension. Like Moses
so
just accepting,
there's a balance.
I'm
Yeah,
going
that's
to
what
be
I'm saying.
miserable.
Yeah, there is a balance. Like, if you are dangerously unhealthy or being dangerously disengaged,
Or if your family thinks that you are.
then you probably have to stop and get some coaching and some counsel and figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah.
Or if you're deeply unhappy and you're walking around every day saying, we're all going to die anyway, kind of a thing. That's probably a bad sign.
I say the thing about your family, by the way, because sometimes if you're a you personality and you're just doing it because you love it and you can, the people that would know that probably is not you.
Right.
You know,
No,
not
right.
not that I'm saying that as like being part of your family, but I'm saying, you know, wife and kids.
Yeah.
If
And
you're-
maybe I don't have that as much because Melody, my wife, she's always pretty optimistic. And so I'm like, should I do this? She goes, yeah, go for it. Like, she wouldn't necessarily be the one to pull the reins back until she starts to say, you're really tired. Like, I'm really concerned about you.
Yeah.
Okay, so she does say that. But yeah, so if you're in the danger zone, so let's talk about that. If you find yourself in the danger zone now, what should you do?
I got a Top Gun song stuck in my head now as you're saying this.
In the danger zone?
Danger zone. do you know what I'm talking about? Some people will know what I'm talking about. It's an 80s song. Anyway, ask a question again. I couldn't.
Yeah, so after this long conversation, let's say we're talking to somebody right now who finds themselves in the danger zone. They're walking around like Josh. They're unhappy with their life. They're
Sure.
not stopping. Their spouse is not happy with their pace. Their kids, they feel like they're neglecting something or whatever the tension is. What do you do?
All right, I'll take a stab at it. Got a couple. I think the first thing is often this happens whenever you lose hope for a few reasons. You're losing hope because it's like, this is never going to end, you know, or I'm not effective, or this is all pointless. I'm not sure that I can last in this. I think part of it is you got to find, like, you know, Jesus talks about the greatest of these, or he talks about faith, hope, and love. I think, you know, faith is rooted in hope first. You have to hope in like a better outcome, that God is going to bring something new, and then your faith gets rooted in the Word. But I think it starts with just like, you know what? I don't believe what God has is just a life of, you know, suffering and of failure and of futility and nothing I do matters. Like, I think you got to root yourself back in. Probably there has to be a diagnosis of like, what is out of balance in my life? Am I working too much? Is my ambition overriding, where the reason I'm unhappy is the fact that I'm not meeting these things? Or am I unhappy because I'm allowing the pressure of people should see me a certain way and I'm not there? Or, you know, and that can drive you to cope by avoiding with a lot of TV and video games
That's
and
what I was
food.
about to.
Or it can drive you to cope with workaholism or any other kind of addiction.
Yeah.
But I think it's like a little bit of diagnostic. It's some adjustment. And then I think it has to be, no, you know what? I know we haven't seen it yet. But I really think the way forward is, but God has great things for our family. God has great things for our church. God has great things for, you know, the business or whatever God's calling you to steward. And it's to start to root back in and to like faith is often a long-term project.
Yeah. So you're not trapped.
Yeah.
God has a plan for you.
Yes.
If you take a step back and you get some good counsel, there is a way through this.
Yes. Yeah.
I think when I look back on the points, if I could like advise a younger me or people who would be going through a similar thing, there were points when I would say things to Allie that were like, that's an indicator that you need to do something. Like, I had a breaking point. Actually, it was that same year. It was like earlier in the year of 2022 where I was going through some difficult things in ministry and dealing with some difficult people, and we went on a date, and she was like, you're not here at all. And I was like, no one, I can't be good enough for anybody. I'm not good enough for you. And then I started listing all these other people, and she was like, whoa, that is crazy. And I was like, so then I wasn't really a journaler.
So you got to listen to yourself.
Yeah. I was grateful for her because she pointed that out, and she didn't take it personally. I started journaling it out, and I was like, okay, this is a season, and it's a season of God stretching me to die to criticize, like to I can't be criticized, because I was like, everything's going fine, but I don't like that I'm being criticized. And so God stretching me beyond that was really important. But I think what I would say is, like, I am always capable of more than I think I am through the Holy Spirit, but I have to have barometers. One of the biggest ones being this, like, community of guys who are in ministry on Monday mornings. That's accountability, but is also just like vulnerability for what you're going through. So much I feel like our health has come out of voicing what we're going through. So I feel like
having them reflect back to you.
I would want to say to anybody who's especially those who are in ministry, but I mean, honestly, just anybody who's trying to follow Jesus, having a community of people that you can be vulnerable with and that can be that sort of barometer, and who wants you to push and to grow and stretch, but can also kind of hear where you're going through, or your spouse and your boss or whatever, whoever that is. But I think arriving at that place for me was really important. You're smirking at me, Dave.
No, I'm not smirking.
Okay. Maybe it's a proud smile. I don't know what it is.
No, I was just thinking.
Okay.
So we
Not smirking.
Okay, good.
Little glimpse into a family.
Yeah,
moment.
there you go.
So you said you got to have hope, right?
Yeah.
And then you got to believe that God has a plan for you, and you got to pay attention to what's going on in you, what you're hearing come out of your own lips. You got once you find out that there's an issue, you need to stop and reflect, maybe journal. You need to get into community where you get some feedback from other people that will keep you accountable for better habits. Anything you'd add?
Yeah, I not really. I think to go back to what I was saying as far as if we're going to highlight, I just think when I go back to seasons of my life like this, it usually is a reflection of I am doing a lot of things because I've lost hope that things are going to go better. Meaning, I don't know how to say it. It's like, so then I'm working out of pressure, or I'm working out of fear, or I'm working out
rather
of
than out of faith.
I don't want to lose this. I'm worried of how this is headed towards disaster. I got to write this back. I got to write the ship. Got to grab the steering wheel. I think to me, the diagnostic of is my life in order is can I honestly say about my life God has a plan, and this I know He's working. Faith is the evidence of things not yet seen, So it's my faith is, I know this hasn't happened yet, but I believe what God said. My reality is based on His word.
So rooted in a promise of something.
Yeah, rooted in a promise.
And
and
a
it's
truth.
It has to be the balance of realism and optimism where you're I know this is where it is, but I know God's going to. So if I'm there.
So not confidence in you, but confidence in God.
Yes.
He's going to do what He promised that He would do through you.
Yes, because I think that stabilizes a little bit. It's look, okay, so even like this, I could say, I know that things haven't gone the way I've wanted them to for the past year, but that's not evidence of the trajectory of the whole scope of my life.
Yeah.
Often that's how it feels.
Right.
It's going to stay here forever.
This is just the season.
Yeah, this is a season, but God has a bigger, just because I don't have the skills now that I thought I did, that I want to do these things at this timeline, at this scale, doesn't mean God doesn't have a use for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean...
You're saying, you can feel this tension, but you're also talking about having peace in the middle of it. It's not that robs you of any sort of peace while you're in the middle of this period where you're do you get what I'm saying? The difference between those two?
You can feel both at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
You can feel I'm inadequate, I'm not where I want to be, I'm still struggling, but I know that God has me on the right track, and I have confidence He's going to take me there.
Because I know that there'd be some people who are so desperate to be I don't have peace. So I just have to accept this tension, which means a lack of peace. But you're not saying a lack of peace in the midst of these things. It's
finding peace in Him.
Yeah. It's finding peace in a lack of your defined success. It's finding peace in the middle of the tension, because you have hope in the fact that God is still moving in this. And this is not just in ministry.
Yeah, it's overall.
And then there's a lot of stuff to balance. The thing is, I feel like it's easier right now to find resources on balance than it is on faith promises and on finding the peace in the middle of these tensions. If you're how do I find balance? Those books we recommended earlier, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer and Emotionally Healthy Discipleship by Peter Scazzera are good places to start. Or Ordering Your Private World by Gordon MacDonald's another good one. Yep. But the I am keeping faith for my church or my family or my business or whatever God's asked you to steward. I feel like that is the sign of when I see people that have a lot of faith, I'm that person's healthy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe not always in every aspect, but that's kind of how I want my life to align.
Mm-hmm. It's good. I'll add one last thing before we close, because I know we're getting to the end. For me, it also helps to write it all down.
Yeah, for sure.
What are my priorities? What is my motivation? Where are my limits? What are my boundaries? That's what I'm in the process of doing right now. And then I share it with the most important people in my life to keep me accountable. So, all right.
Yeah.
How do we end this, Dave? Take us home.
I think in summary, this is a tension that every person probably deals with to some degree. The direction of your life and the balance of being a healthy person, healthy, family member, husband, wife, child, whatever, but healthy in terms of, or I should say, pursuing all that God has for us. I think that's a normal thing. I think everybody has to evaluate it. And I think we have to have a balance of peace and hope and rooting ourselves in God's promises, but having healthy patterns that we write down and prioritize. I guess that's sort of the summary of the whole thing. So regardless, all this to say, if this is you, I think often these kind of podcasts touch a nerve for some people, and they're like, like this is uncomfortable to talk about because I'm right here. If this is you, we've all three of us have been there and lived there in different types of those pressure points. But I would say, you can reach out to any of us. You can, if you're at Allison Park Church, we have ministries, life groups that can help you to find a community like this, pastors that can help to give you some wise guidance.
Or the various places where you can leave comments. If you really do need some help and you just want to say, I need to talk to somebody, we'll find a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's anything else you want to add, Josh? We're good. Cool.
Yep. Thanks, Josh, for being a part of the podcast. As always, we say, if you want to leave us a 5-star review, we'd love that, and we look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, any of the ways that you want to help. I always want to hit this at the end because there's a number of ways. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can share on social media. You can give us a 5-star review in a podcast. But any of the ways that you can help us to spread the word is extremely appreciated, and hopefully will help other people. So, all right. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you guys again next time.